Okay, I think we can go to the next slide, Brian. Let's start with the land acknowledgement as folks are continuing to come into the room with us. So on behalf of the Center for Nonprofit Management, we have adapted this practice of recognizing the first people of this land in Southern California. Our office is in downtown Los Angeles, also known as the home of the Tongva or Kizh people, who were the original caretakers of this land, the animals and the sacred sites here in what we call Southern California. We are sharing photos here to show that these folks are still here caring for the land and caring for this very special place that we call home. The first photo is a group that's working to protect a sacred site on the campus of Cal State Long Beach. And the second group is a group of artists from the Tongva people, the Kizh people, who are still here in our area, still taking care of their ancestral homeland. So we share gratitude with them for that and acknowledge the care that they've taken that allows us all to be here today. Fantastic. I see more folks joining and lots of greetings. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. And we will ask Regina to go ahead and open up the session for us today.
Well, thanks, Alexis, and good morning, everybody. It's great to see all these familiar faces on I think it's a Wednesday. Just wanted to say good morning and welcome. You guys may have noticed this is a conversation today, so you'll be hearing from our presenters, but they want to hear from you. So just want to say thank you to the gas company for making this possible. And thanks to our team at CNM for making sure that everything goes smoothly. We want to see what you're thinking, so take advantage of the chat. We have people that are going to be keeping an eye on that as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you, Alexis. Thank you, Tricia, for making this all possible today, and I'll turn it back over to the team.
Awesome. So we have a facilitation team today to make this experience a good one for all of us. I'm joined by my colleagues, Brian, who is our Zoom producer today. He's going to be helping us roll through the process together. And then my colleague, Joy, who also will be monitoring chat and reactions. If there's questions or tech tips you need, please do send us a chat and we will do our best to help you with anything that might come up. Just so you know, we are recording today so that we can share this content with folks who weren't able to be with us and also share it with our partners at the gas company and the Black-led Organization Database Project. We are not sharing, we are not recording breakout groups. That's your space to talk through and answer the questions. So that remains a space where you can speak freely. Again, we're asking you to share your photo if you can, your video feed if you can, and we'll be monitoring for ambient noise. We'll ask you to do that also. But we also know that in this day and age, we might be in spaces where, you know, you have a toddler laughing or crying or a dog barking or your office mate or roommate speaking. So we're going to ask that we extend ourselves and each other grace for those signs of life that might come up during our time together. Go ahead to the next. So what's on the agenda today? We're going to do a really quick sector overview, talking about this current conversation that we're in as a nonprofit sector, as organizations that are working to help our communities fulfill their aspirations and meet their needs. We'll hear from Tricia from the SoCalGas, who really was responsible for bringing us together in partnership for today, talking about her experience with using data through the Black-led Organization Database. We're going to get a tour of the Black-led Organization Database from the amazing creators of this tool at the stage that it's in now. And we're really going to spend the bulk of the time there and also in small group discussions. And then we'll have a little closing reflection. We'll have a little mood music also, and we hope that along the way we really get to bring our insights and our imagination to bear on this Black-led organization database project and think creatively about all the things that we can do together. Excuse me. We can go to the next slide, Brian. I know some of you have put in the chat your organizations, your names. We love that. We also want to see, get a little sense of who's in the room too. So we're going to do a couple of polls to start with. So let's start with question 1. I see Dynasty from Dynasty's United Youth Association, UCLA Labor Center, Care at Work. Okay, so actually, I think this is for the next poll. Can we look at the question that has organizational information? I see Center for Leadership by Women of Color at USC, Elevate Your Game. Here we go. So go ahead and get started on the poll if you can see that on your screen. We're looking for the county where your organization primarily works, the type of organization, and your role with the organization. Okay, we got most people chiming in here. We'll give another moment for others. Okay, while you're responding, I see Shamika from Youth with a Purpose, Donna from Mom's House, Winona from I Dream for Racial Health Equity, LA City College, Devon calling in from the IE. All right, here we go. We're going to close this in 5, 4, 3, 2. We got most folks answering here. Okay. Okay, so let's start with type of organization first. Everybody answered on here. We have 50% Black-led organizations. We have 27% Black guided, and we'll have 23% of folks on the call from organizations with a mission to positively impact the Black community. So we'll be talking in a little bit more. We'll hear more from the Mapping California, Black California team about these definitions and how they've been helpful in putting together the database. What is your role with the organization? We have 50% of the folks on the call are executive directors, 9% C-level, and then we have a sprinkling of others at 41%. Excellent. And then in terms of geography, we have, sorry, can you put, let me go back for a second. 77% folks on the call from LA County. We have a good representation from Riverside County, 9%, and then we have some other counties that are not represented on our list. So if you can put that on the chat, the county you're coming from, if it wasn't on the list, that's going to be great. We'll go ahead and take a look at that. Okay. Okay, next slide, Brian. All right. So part of the context setting for this conversation is to share about the larger conversation we've been having in the nonprofit sector over time, but more especially in the last 2 to 3 years with COVID, the economic impact, and then the different levels of awareness about the ongoing racial injustices in this country. And there's lots of researchers and lots of folks looking at this data. The thing that I wanted to lift up today is that we know that your organizations have been doing an incredible job of continuing to serve the community during these very challenging times. And organizations have been pivoting to meet the demands of the moment. So some of the data that we have from this report on the front lines is telling us that 54% of organizations led by people of color have increased their coalition work. We know that 51% have increased their direct service work, 48% have increased advocacy, and 45% have increased mutual aid. So this is folks seeing what needs to happen in their community, seeing their needs, and really being on the front lines before government and other agencies can get there. We know that our frontline organizations are meeting needs right away. We can go to the next slide. Locally, we know also that at the same time that organizations have been doing a heroic job of meeting the needs of the moment, that they're also doing this in the midst of challenges. So declining donations, needing to reduce staff, having more demand for services. And now we have, as we've been hearing so much, the great resignation or people going. So I'm sure none of this is news to people on the call. We're just sharing it because this is part of the context. And we're really eager to think together about how data can help us understand what's happening, address the needs, support our organizations at this time. Let's go to the next. And so to get us more into the data mode and thinking about what we can do together, we just want to understand quickly a little bit about how your organization might be using data already. So we have one question here, and we'll take a moment to have you respond. The question is, what ways do Black-led organizations use data? And it's choose as many as apply. Your options are sharing data on program results in marketing and fund development, sharing demographic data about our community in marketing and fund development, collecting data to learn more about the community context, that's assets and needs, using data as part of education and advocacy, and using data to engage your constituents. We had some more folks join. Nice to see you. From Giving Youth Opportunities and the Black Equity Collective. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, we got about half of folks who've responded to how we use data. It looks like in the lead at the moment, it's a tie between sharing data on program results in marketing and fund development. Now we have collecting data to learn more about community context. Okay, the numbers are rolling in. Almost there. Let's give it about 5 more seconds. Okay. So we're going to close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it looks like most groups are sharing data on program results in marketing and fund development, and then collecting data to learn more about community context. Great, excellent. Using data as part of education and advocacy, we have 67%, and then sharing demographic data about the community in marketing and fundraising, and using data to engage the constituents. So it looks like a pretty rounded out set of responses here. So keep this in mind as we go into the next section of our time together today. Go ahead to the next slide.
Just real quick, so everything looked good. I was having some technical difficulties.
Yes, I'm seeing the poll results. And back to the slide. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to Tricia. She is going to lead us into the next session, which is where we get to tour the Black-led organization database and have some discussions about possibilities and hopes for the future. Go ahead, Tricia.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for participating today. SoCalGas is really proud to partner with Mapping Black California and the Center for Nonprofit Management. We're really excited to share with you this tool that Mapping Black California created for SoCalGas last year, with the hope that others can benefit from it as well. And we're also, really hoping to get your feedback to see how this could help others. At SoCalGas, after the murder of George Floyd, like many companies, SoCalGas took a step back to assess our support and impact in the Black community and to identify ways that we could improve. So our strategy focused on people, purchasing, and philanthropy, although I would prefer to say community investment, and that's probably more accurate. So over the last year and a half, we've made a lot of improvements in that space. So the first P, the people, is mostly focused internally, and this is SoCalGas developing our overall DE&I strategy, our organizational infrastructure to support that, and programs that help support our employees in the development and promotion and retention of our employees. From the purchasing space, we focus to invest procurement dollars among women, LGBTQ, disabled veterans, minority, and small business enterprises. And we have focus goals to increase our partnerships with Black-led businesses. So in the philanthropy space, which is my area of responsibility, we strive to communicate, or we strive to create meaningful impact in the community. So right now we're really focused on programs on workforce and scholarships. But when we looked at that third P and how we were doing specifically in Black communities, that's where Paulette's mapping project was so helpful to us. So first, we asked Paulette's team to map our service territory. We're the nation's largest natural gas distribution company. We serve 12 counties from Central to Southern California. And so they mapped our service territory, and then they also mapped with census data where the Black population lives within our service territory. Then we had them map our grant giving, so we could see if our giving aligned with the population stats. But what was even more helpful was when Paulette's team mapped COVID-19 impacts among the Black community and identified the greatest needs by region. They also mapped the location of Black-led nonprofits so we could see if there were opportunities to engage with new nonprofits to serve the community better. So one of the greatest learnings for us out of this project was that we have a lot more opportunities to support Black communities, especially in the Inland Empire and Central Valley, and most notably with workforce and housing. So this project's helped us, and it's going to continue to help us shape the way that we give our community investments, and we're really hoping to get feedback from this team today. So with that, I want to introduce Paulette's team. Dr. Paulette Brown-Hines and I want to introduce Paulette and her team so they can get into the details of the mapping project and how it's grown. Again, our hope is that you'll find this information helpful and have ideas to improve it and ideas to share it to help Black-led nonprofits support the communities they serve. So Dr. Paulette Brown-Hines is the founder of Voice Media Ventures and is the second generation publisher of the Black Voice News. She's the immediate past president of the California News Publishers Association and the first African-American to lead the organization in its over 130-year history. She is chair of the board of the Inland Empire Community Foundation. I see we have some IE people representing today, so thank you for joining us. And she sits on the boards of the California Press Foundation, Cal Matters, and the James Irvine Foundation. She's the founder of Mapping Black California, a community mapping STEAM initiative, and was named one of 10 recipients of Stanford University's John S. Knight Fellowship. Also on her team is Candace Mays. Candace serves as Mapping Black California's project director. She has a diverse professional background in grassroots nonprofit organization, management, development, and grant making. After receiving her MA in English education from New York University, she pursued an MFA in creative writing fiction at the University of Miami. Having returned to Southern California and her beloved Riverside County, Candace seeks to humanize GIS by mining narratives from data on all things historical, Californian, and most importantly, Black. And last but not least, Ms. Alex Reed is the project manager for Mapping Black California and provides support as a data researcher and visualizer for its many initiatives. In her broader practice, she operates under the tagline of Jane of all trades, working at the intersection of data and storytelling. As a data activist, Alex has been able to address issues that range from disparities in health and education to social justice and civil rights for a variety of institutions, the Andy Warhol Museum, Carnegie Mellon University, and World Stage Inc., to name a few. So welcome, ladies, and thank you for being here today. Paulette, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Tricia, and thank you for supporting this project the way you have, and for CNM bringing this group together. We're really excited to share with you what we're doing and to hopefully get some great feedback. This is definitely a work in progress for us. We are learning while doing and learning together. And we really appreciate Tricia for being a huge advocate for the work that we're doing. She mentioned in my bio, I'm publisher of the Black Voice News. And for the past several years, I've been leading the transformation of the newspaper, which is my family's 50-year-old news organization, and leading it into a solutions-oriented and justice-focused news and information organization to better serve the Black community. And as a part of the journey, we created and launched Mapping Black California, as Tricia mentioned, which is an initiative to better understand, report on, and visualize data on Black Californians. And the initiative utilizes geospatial technology to enhance community news and storytelling. And you could move to the next slide if you, thank you. So what happened is our mapping work led us to better understand the need for better data, and led us to develop in 2021 the Hub, which is now a Google News Initiative funded data hub that allows us to better share and store our curated data sets for analysis and accessibility. And that larger data hub is still in development with the data management company, AVP. But before the pandemic, our team was selected to lead the Black Media and Communication Strategy for California's 2020 census. I know Candace will share a little bit more about that. But during our focus groups, we really listened and learned what community members wanted. And they really wanted to better understand how census data impacts their lives. They really, more specifically, wanted proficiency in data literacy. At the same time, so we had 2020 census we're working on, the pandemic hits. Our team starts collecting data on the impacts of COVID on Black communities in California. So with that data, we ended up creating a dashboard using Esri's ArcGIS software of all the data that we could find on Black infection rates, death rates, vaccine rates, and created this tool that we were able to use in our reporting. Once again, all these things happening at the same time. George Floyd was killed. We created a racism as a public health crisis tracker. And the plan with that is to track the operationalization of these declarations by agencies across the state. And last year, we also worked with Kelly Lab at Cal Berkeley to create a map on police funding for each city in California. So we're trying to do this work. We're struggling in our own attempts to produce more data-supported reporting. And we start asking ourselves questions. And one is how we might make data reporting, especially reporting on racial justice and equity, more accessible to Black-led media organizations like ours. So specifically, we were thinking at the time of Black-led media organizations and data. Then Tricia calls, and she asked us to do the work that we ended up doing for her on Black-led organizations in her service territory. And as we shared that project with others, we learned that they too wanted to have a better access to data as they worked on providing solutions for their communities. And that really expanded our thinking. As Tricia mentioned, I'm on the James Irvine Foundation Board and chair of the Inland Empire Community Foundation Board. And I work with a group called Leverage the Trust California, which is coordinated by AbbVie. And as we were doing that work, we started talking about the AbbVie's imperatives, 10 imperatives. And the first one is building agency, which is increasing investments in Black-led organizations, the work that we were really intimately involved in with Tricia and SoCalGas. And one of the goals of that work is to build a searchable database of Black-led organizations. So there was so much synergy with all the initiatives and the work we were doing that we saw an opportunity to combine the two projects, building out this database of Black-led organizations throughout California and expanding the universe of users for the data hub that we were working on through the Google News Initiative funding. As Trisha mentioned, for the past 5 months, I've served as a JSK Community Impact Fellow at Stanford, and I'm spending my fellowship time researching this idea, as our team is actually in the process of building the database and in developing this data hub platform. So I very much look forward to hearing from this group, and we're hoping that it's something that you could find useful in the work you're doing. Now I'd like to pass it over to Alex to give you a demonstration of the work that she's been up to.
Thanks so much, Paulette. Like she said, and as Trisha outlined earlier, I'm going to kind of just take a moment to go through sort of the data background of this, the research that went into it, and then I will walk through the first phase of this project that we're rolling out, which is the map of all of the Black-led orgs in California that we have collected. So like they were talking about earlier, SoCalGas awarded us this grant to first map out the Black-led orgs in the SoCalGas territories, and then to analyze the patterns between SoCalGas grant-making trends and the BLO service areas of focus in Black communities specifically. In the pursuit of that, we scoured the internet, we borrowed from pre-existing lists, we tapped network resources, we were on the phone, we were sending emails, trying to compile as comprehensive a list as 18 months of work could manage. We've been working on this since just the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. And we were really just trying to pull together a list of any and all organizations that were led by Black people, founded by Black people, guided by Black people, and who had the specific target of trying to meet Black needs in the Black community. In the pursuit of, so many people had asked us, what exactly is a Black-led org? Well, we had characterized Black-led organizations using the ABFI leverage to trust definition. So I'll just go over it really fast. Black-led organizations are those that have Black leadership in control of decision-making, including a Black CEO, a predominantly Black board, and whose mission and intention is to have a positive impact on Black communities. In addition to that, we, in order to advance our particular mission of targeting Black communities across the state of California, we have considered that as organizations grow, as they change, as leadership moves, that the historic intention of these organizations, Black founders and the Black interest groups, also served as qualifications for these organizations. So we've kind of broken them up, as you can see on the right side of this screen, under two definitions, a Black-led organization and a Black-guided organization, just to make sure that we could be as comprehensive as possible as comprehensive as possible for who we included on this list. We didn't want to miss anybody. We then broke those BLOs up by sector: health and human services, education, women's health, men's health, so on and so forth. And then further by service, so things like community development, immigration, college prep, youth focus, trying to, again, make sure that this list and that this database that we're working on building is going to be as comprehensive as possible and as easy to use for users as possible. After developing that list in those territories, we felt like we were missing sort of a broader understanding of the ecosystem that these BLOs operated within. So we expanded that work and looked beyond who was in the community to how the community was thriving or even just surviving before the worldwide pandemic. We really wanted to know where did these communities stand before walking into COVID-19, so that way we could get a better idea of how COVID-19 might impact them on their way out. What would the lasting, long effects of this pandemic be? So as I'll show you in a little bit, when I share the map for the dashboard, we have a layer on here that scores the multiple risk factors coming into the pandemic, just so that we could identify, county-specific areas of high risk and thus high investment needs. Out of that analysis was born the first project, the BLO database, impact-driven targeting of mission-aligned BLOs. So I'll go ahead and share the map right now. And I just wanted to mention that we're rolling this out in phases, and the map is going to be the first phase of this project that we're doing under the home of the hub called BLO databases. And so as we look at this, we just get a little introduction as to sort of what this project is. It's a comprehensive or near comprehensive list of the Black-led and Black-guided nonprofit organizations across the state of California. As we move into the next phases of this project, we're going to be opening this up for a little bit more the crowdsourcing aspect, we definitely are trying to get in touch with the communities and the orgs directly so that we can figure out how to add places that we're missing, how to make sure that we're being comprehensive and accurate and getting more than just, website information or Facebook information about these organizations. So as we enter this dashboard, we first can get an overview of the entire state of California. There are a few different operational base layers on here, the main one being a layer of gray shades that targets the densest Black areas in the state of California. So this is by census tract in a lot of areas. And the areas that are darker are what we would call Black dense. So the average population for Black people is 6.5% in the state of California. So with a baseline of 6.5%, the darker an area gets, the more Black dense it is. So some of the darkest areas have populations in the 20 to 34% range. Some of the lighter areas have populations less than 6.5, down to 3, down to 0, that kind of thing across the state of California. And then we have that COVID impact layer that I was just mentioning earlier, where we took like an overall look at these communities in various categories such as demographics, health, employment, education, housing, and we put down all the possible indicators and factors that we thought we could use for this. We used several different sources, the census, Healthy Places Index, some projects that had already gone on to measure Los Angeles County and San Bernardino County, and we combined those things into different scores and assigned these community scores based off of those indicators, just so that political leaders, funders, they could come to this map and they could take a look and see where are some of the areas that we should really be investing. Maybe in a place like San Bernardino, education that is scoring a lot higher on the list doesn't need as much focus as employment, which is scoring a lot lower on the list. And then we overlaid that our Black-led organizations. So with this map, you can navigate on here to find organizations of interest in you by category: civic service, youth services, human services. You can click to filter, you can add multiple at a time, you can show all of them. And then just using that, you can go ahead and see what sort of services are available in your area, what Black-led organizations meet the needs that you are looking for specifically. In this case, the Center for Empowerment of Families, Inc. Their purpose is here, their address, if you want to visit, if you want to send them money, their website, and then who to contact, who's their first point of contact. Sometimes it's a phone number, sometimes it's an email. And we had just laid all those organizations out on here for as many that we could find. 424 in this first iteration. I believe there are still maybe 50 or so meant to go on here. Just so that at an overall glance, you could see where the organizations are available, where the services are available in the state of California. And then in the next phase of this project, we'll be rolling out the actual database, which is a searchable database where you'll be able to find organizations by some other tags, such as the services that they provide, and then also their location, their county, their area, their coverage, those sort of things. So that was the map. And as we began to compile this, as the first move to expand the map, we had started in Southern California, of course, and our indicators go as far as Southern California. And then we began probing into Northern California and the Bay Area just to get an idea of the nonprofit space up there. And then by chance, we took a trip to Oakland. And in this chance visit to Oakland, a friend of mine and I stopped by the Women in the Black Panther Party House. And there we had the awesome opportunity to speak with the organizer and leader there, Jill Christina Vest. It's her home. She has a wonderful display in the bottom floor of her home. And she was really the one who gave us the first insights onto how we could make this more than just a map for policymakers and funders. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Candace, and she's going to talk about how the BLO database is built to support nonprofits specifically and how it fits into the larger DeHub platform.
Thank you so much, Alex. And thank all of you so much for being here. As you can see, Alex is the whiz kid of Mapping Black California. Without her, none of this work would be done. I call her the star of our organization. And here today with all of you as our Black-led orgs, you're the star of today's focus group. You're the ones in the communities doing the work and figuring out a way to get it done. Essentially, you make a way out of no way, as we know in the Black community is what we all do every day. Black-led orgs have always been on Mapping Black California's mind. Paulette briefly referenced our work with the census campaign. That was how I got my start with Mapping Black California. And while working on the 2020 census campaign, one of our biggest goals was to leverage the roles of BLOs as trusted messengers in the Black community to disseminate accurate information. However, making inroads proved difficult as there was a lack of investment from gatekeepers and no comprehensive statewide list of BLOs created which created multiple barriers to establishing and executing outreach plans. That was part of our inspiration behind developing our own comprehensive list. You can go ahead to the next slide. Around this time, we were also simultaneously working on a data hub and content sharing platform that would support Black-led media organizations. And our work with SoCalGas allowed us to see our data hub's potential differently. We now see it as a benefit to a wider community of Black-led organizations, including all of you participating in this focus group today. Basically, we've been daydreaming and thinking of you. It is an opportunity for BLOs and funders and other key stakeholders of the sector to work together more strategically and reciprocally via a data-based approach. This strategic approach takes directions in outreach efforts, programmatic priorities, and funding strategies from data, ensuring communities receive care in the areas where they need it the most. There is an opportunity for networking and genuine partnership building, not only between BLOs and funders, but BLOs and BLOs region-wide, statewide, and even nationwide, to create coordinated strategic approaches to addressing long-standing disparities in Black communities. What we need is a virtual space transcending industries and geographic barriers. What's needed is a data-focused communal space where there are endless seats at the table, because the people at the table are the ones building and maintaining that table. What we need is a hub. The Hub BLO is an intersectional digital resource and platform where BLOs can expand capacity, grow with data, and build community. As an incubator of Afrofuturistic thinking, innovation, and problem solving, the Hub BLO will be a virtual space where data not only identifies gaps, but provides BLOs with tools, resources, and networks needed to fill those gaps with sustainable solutions. This isn't just about data, it's about coalition building. We're daydreaming of a space where a digital community of California's Black-led organizations can coalesce while gathering and analyzing data to develop research recommendations, data visualizations, combine resources, and leverage regional community-specific knowledge to support Black-led organization data-informed strategies, all while expanding the pool of potential funders through an expanded web presence. But we can't develop this tool with y'all in mind without checking in with you first. We want to hear straight from you how data impacts your sustainability and work as a Black-led org. We want to know what your needs, wants, and dreams are. We are here to listen and learn from the people on the ground doing the work. We are here to learn and listen from y'all. Next slide, please. Once again, I want to reiterate that all the organizations in the room today are the stars of today, and we're really interested in hearing your voice and hearing what you need from data and from what data can do. We're here to learn and dream with you. So thank y'all so much for being here, and I can't wait to hear and see what your feedback is and what questions and ideas you have for the future of data and Black-led organizations.
Awesome. Thank you, Candace. I wonder, Candace and Alex, if we can take a moment to, maybe Alex, you can drive the map for us for a minute. And if folks have something that they want to see, to kind of drill down and look at the map a little bit. There's so much richness there and so many layers. And I want to just make sure that people have a chance to check it out a little bit more before we go into the small group discussion. So maybe we can go back to that slide. Thank you, Alex. So I love the story about the women in the Black Panther Party organization. Can you find that on the map for us? Are they here?
So the Women in the Black Panther Party is actually one of very few organizations who's not on this map.
Okay.
One of the key things that we had worked for, or what we had decided on when this first iteration was, we wanted to make sure that the map was sort of like irreproachable as possible. You do have to have a nonprofit 501c3 registered organization, and they are currently working on their registration, which is another one of the things that we want to be able to do with this interconnected space, is help these organizations achieve the certification that they need in order to really well functionally operate in their spaces to get funding, that sort of thing. So while she is not on here, she is definitely one of the orgs that we are supporting to help get on this map.
Excellent. Can you just maybe zoom into Oakland so we could, or an area where there's a lot of dots that we can kind of dig in, see who's there, what's happening?
Of course.
Because this is one of the things, looking as a new person to this map, is like the level of detail and the spread of the information at the same time is really phenomenal.
So there are a few different things that we have going on with the different dots on here. We have their area, which is something that will be searchable in our database. Of course, the title of the organization and that purpose. And we're really just looking for some more information about what would be helpful to include on here. What do you want? Who do you want to see on this thing? And then also, we want to start targeting organizations that don't necessarily have a web presence. That's where a lot of this research, aside from just tapping people that we know in the industry, comes from, is internet searches. And we know that a lot of one-man shows, two-man shows can't necessarily have the best developed website necessarily.
Alex, this is Paulette. There was a question in the chat about fiscally sponsored organizations being included or not included. I know you said they had to have 501c3 status, but I know what you've been talking about is like crowdsourcing, information. So I'm wondering what what you're thinking about that, and I know there were some even questions about organizations that had multiple chapters or
Right. So I think these are all things that we're having discussions about as to not necessarily who gets to get on and who doesn't get to get on, but how to categorize that thing, again, because we're trying to be so comprehensive. We really want everyone to be included. Specifically answering the question as to multiple chapters, generally the way that we look at it is we do the sort of main office. We always make a note on here if an organization has multiple chapters across the state. We have the main office as the pinpoint, and then we say they may have an office in your area, or check out their website for more information. Because sort of in this first phase of things, we're just trying to make sure that everyone is represented, and then as we dig down into the details, then we can make sure that in the database, people are actually being navigated to the spaces that matter to them.
With that, this is the first iteration of the database. And so in additional phases, we will be expanding the list and expanding how things are categorized. But for the first round, we really wanted to make sure we had as comprehensive a list as possible of 501c3s.
Beautiful.
Alexis, can I ask a question? It's Regina.
Yes.
I'm always curious with researchers when they go in, they have some assumptions, and I'm curious with Paulette and her team, what surprised them when they looked at this map?
I can say from my perspective, one of the big things that we started with this map was with SoCalGas. They said, hey, can you give us a map of everybody? But can you really do us a favor and dig down into like in the Central Valley, into Central California? We can't really find anyone out there. We want to make sure that we're not missing out on anything. And we said, sure, why not? And I very naively, very optimistically thought, oh, it'll be super easy. They'll be as connected as LA or the East Bay is, because, where Black people tend to congregate, we tend to talk to each other, right? That was not the case. It took so much more time finding just these few organizations in Central California than it did to find, 2 or 3 times as many in Los Angeles and in Oakland. And as a researcher, you begin to think about like the broader context of things, and it really just kind of speaks to how you can get these communities that end up isolated, right? They aren't coastal communities where the larger populations are, but they still need funding, they still need help, they still need to be connected with one another. And it was just really interesting from my perspective to see it's hard to find them out here because no one has been looking for them.
Oh, okay, excellent.
There's a question in the chat that I think is an important one, Alex, about the digital only orgs and that may not service a particular geographic area, and how did you just go with the address of the main office, or how did you handle that?
So as a part of that registration, orgs do have to have an address on file, and oftentimes that's a PO box. Esri is really good actually at geocoding those things. So the PO box may not actually be representative of their territory, but that's something that we knew going into this and kind of add as a caveat onto all of our maps and dashboards. That kind of thing is where this point is located may not exactly be where they serve, and that's something else that we're looking to add to this map and to this database is actual service territory. Something else to note though, there are, like I had briefly mentioned, On this map, there are about 424 organizations represented. We have like a total of 459 or something like that. So there were 25 or so organizations that didn't have addresses that are or are digital only. They may not be on the map specifically, but they are on the database, right? They will still be searchable when they fall under certain categories. And we intend to make the database as beautiful as the map is, so people should still look to use it.
Okay, we had a request to show Los Angeles, which I think is what we're looking at now, and then another one to show Lancaster, Palmdale. And let's do that before we get ready to set out into our small group discussions.
You
We
know
also
what?
have a quick question from Rob. I'm sorry, Paulette.
Oh, no, I was just gonna add, I think one of the challenges too, to Regina's question about, or what are surprises. And I don't think it was a surprise, but I think one of the challenges too is organizations that may have one mission when you look them up, but then you find out they have, several, or they may have changed. And to try to tag them under a certain type of organization, I think became a challenge and something that took more time and work. And Alex isn't doing this alone. I don't know if she mentioned, building a team around Alex to help her really dig into the data.
Nice. And what was the last question, Brian?
Yeah, Rob had a question.
Thank you all so much. I'm really looking forward to the small group conversation. Paulette, your last comment also further highlights one of the questions that I was thinking about from the very beginning when we were talking about Black-led and or Black-guided. In terms those, depending on the size of your organization, could be a very fluid term. So I was wondering how that was going to play out. Or is that part of the questioning process that you all are undertaking as you go through this process?
Yes, and Alex, I don't know if you want to go back to that slide on kind of the way we defined it, and we did, look at ABFI's definition because it has kind of become more universal. But then what we found is that there's certain, even with that definition, there's certain organizations that have, that have changed. Maybe they're no longer a Black leader or CEO, but they're like historically been considered, an organization that services Black communities. And we, so we wanted to make sure those were not missed in that. But we're still, that's part of this process now, and just really appreciate that you're here, and part of this conversation is helping us, think through that and making sure that that we are inclusive as we can be. So that's why we had like a little chart that we used, and this was a process in development too. There was a question. So part of the feedback, we'd love to hear your thoughts on that. If we're if we're off base on it, or if there's even more things that we could look at in terms of how we're defining it. The other question someone had about, I saw it in the chat, about fiscally sponsored organizations. Alex can correct me. I don't think we had those included because when we first started, it was just 501c3s, but that will be a category then that we'll need to add and tag as a part of this database.
We do have a list going of organizations. So we have a master list that has nearing 600 orgs on it, that has all of the kind of sort of satellite, I'm calling them satellite only because they didn't fit this first round definition of what a Black-led org was with the 501c3 status. But fiscally sponsored organizations, and then also funds from that are not necessarily Black-led orgs, but are like collective or community funds, are also on this list. We are just working to add them under their own topic. And we really wanted to start getting feedback on the first iteration of this thing, so that as we move forward into other phases, we're moving in a more directed approach, just as what we thought organizations needed.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm just noting here that there are several questions that have been answered in the chat, and also links that have been shared in the chat. So we can share those with everyone who registered for the event after the fact. So if you didn't catch it on the chat, you didn't copy it, you want to send organizations to the team to get on the list, we will make sure that you get that information after today. And then Candace says, we got you, Ms. Valentine. We're not going to leave you out as a fiscally sponsored project. So, excuse me, sorry. I want to make sure that we have a chance for the small group discussion. So if we can move to the next slide, because this is the juicy part of our time together. We're going to put you in small groups of about 5 and give you a chance to talk about these questions. What additional information would you like to see on here, or other questions that you have about the map and the database? How is this information most helpful to you as a leader or for your organization and your community, and where and with whom should this information be shared? We will give you, Brian will post in the chat a link to a Google Doc where you can capture your conversation. And then we're going to ask you when you come back to share some highlights of your conversation. And we have a Google Doc. We're asking folks to take notes of your conversation so that we can share this with the BLO database team, so that we're capturing the wisdom, the insights, the questions, the hunches, and inspiration that's coming out of today. So let's make sure that we have the links. There's a link in the chat. We have some folks who won't be able to join us for the small groups. Thanks for being here for the time that you had with us. Thanks to Candace and Alex. And you will get an invitation on your screen to join a breakout room. It will have a room number. That's where you make your notes in the Google Doc. And the questions that you're answering are on the Google Doc itself. So it's your time to, throw around ideas, share inspiration, and document questions you have.
And if you have any questions, feel free to come back to the main room or ping me, and I can join your breakout room if anything.
Exactly. Same. You can also chat me.
Okay, I'm gonna open up the breakout.
And Alex is going to add the email to the Google Doc too. Thank you.
Oh, hosts, you're all gonna be in a breakout room. I couldn't do it automatically without sending you somewhere, so just come back if you feel like it.
Thank you, Brian.
Hi, Mara.
Hi there. I'm just lurking. I'm not really helping. So
Okay, did you want to hop into the breakout room, or are you good out here?
no, I'm gonna have to probably go off to do something else, but I wanted to I'm gonna come back, I think, for the debrief.
Uh-huh.
Unless you need me.
No, I think we're fine.
Okay.
Okay.
How long are they gonna be in breakout groups?
About 15 minutes. I'm gonna put it in the chat.
Okay. Great work so far. Looks good.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. I'm loving it so far.
Good. All right, I'll come back. I'll see you in a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye.
Thank you.
There we go.
Candace, I really liked what you said about, potentially breaking down the geographic barriers too. And, why couldn't you help other organizations nationwide, that are trying to do the same thing? I think that's really exciting.
Thanks. Yeah, no, that's to me what's, because I'm like iffy about the internet. Paulette knows I'll go on a rant weekly about it, but that's the best part, right? Is like on the internet, then there's no geographic barriers, right? Because it's a little bit of a free for all, but in the best way. So how can you leverage that with data and with trying to make community impacts? Because with the census work, it was hard. You know,
Yeah.
it was hard to move in different regions, and different regions had their own cultures and ways of functioning. So if we can make this like a collective space where people can, you know, network together and not have to navigate those kind of those barriers, that would be ideal.
Yeah. Very exciting. And did you guys recognize a lot of the orgs that were on today's call? Were they on your list?
Oh, you're on mute, Alex.
When people were first introducing themselves, I was like, oh, I was taking a list of all the ones that were in there, just to make sure that I could check and say that we had them. But then as we got further into it, I was like, wait a minute, I know these.
Are they on your
on
list?
this side? Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I was glad that one person asked where they could send more names, because that's part of the goal too, is to like crowdsource
Right.
whatever we're missing,
Yeah.
because not
Yeah.
everyone has a website or things like that. So that was good to see that part will function as well.
Mhm.
The map looks great too. You guys have done a lot of work to it. It looks really nice.
Thanks. I wish
I
we could
wonder
send
if we
over.
could reverse engineer this a bit, because we've been for the last 15 years doing this nonprofit leadership development program specifically for people of color who want to move into the top job. Usually they're kind of the number twos in a nonprofit, but you know, a portion of those guys are Black, and we try to keep track of them. So I wonder if we could, there are 900 graduates of that program.
Wow.
Almost all of them are in top jobs. And, you know, I would say half Black, half brown, give or take. So there's lots of leaders out there. Some of them are probably in your sample and some of them maybe not. So I thought maybe we could overlay if there's something, if there's an easy way to do that. They also move around, so I can certainly appreciate the dilemma.
Right.
Find them, you know, they graduate, they get promoted, they move. We can find some of them, not all of them, but we could certainly, I mean, we have a pretty big mailing list, so we can certainly help you expand that reach.
Be awesome.
Yeah, I was even thinking like when you're ready, we can put it in our e-blast, like, you know, a little notice about the project and then the email to send the orgs that you know.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think, Regina, to your point about tracking where Black leadership goes, even if it's not a spatialized maps, there are ways to like digitally like story tell that, where you can kind of like have a node of a person and it shoots off to what jobs they do, and you can kind of make a web and see the trends and how Black leadership maybe moves throughout the sector. So there's an opportunity there to do something cool.
I was thinking of Link Curious, Candace.
That's exactly what popped into my brain. So there's a way to like that you can visualize it, so you can see like the trends and patterns of how Black leadership or brown leadership is moving in the sector, and look at patterns really to, you know, see what
You
some
know,
of the
I would
options
love
are.
to talk to you about that, because after they graduate with us, we don't necessarily see them for a while. You know, once they're in the job and then it's time for a board retreat or something, they come back. But you know, there's a gap in there, and I've not known how they're doing. I've always been curious about, you know, we helped prepare you to take on these tasks, but we don't know how you're doing. And this whole conversation we really care about this stuff. So.
And I'm thinking from a funder standpoint, something that I've been doing lately is like sponsoring a leader of color to go through, like Leadership California or Southern California Leadership Network, or, you know, those types of programs. And so if there was a database, or, you know, if there was information about upcoming leaders, that could be another source for funders.
Between Coro, SCLN, RNLDP program.
Ably, I mean, we've sponsored a lot of different leadership development programs.
And then too, you can there be a way to like track the effectiveness of different programs, you know, survey the leaders who have been through it.
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways you could visualize information on that.
Yeah, what was always interesting to me about that is, you know, it was for people that wanted to, there were people of color that wanted the top jobs in nonprofits. And there were always, there's about 3% that after going through the program said, forget it, I don't want those jobs. They're just hard. And I wanted to be in the number 2 and thought, you know, that's good too. You know, if they know that that's not what they want.
Yeah.
But they also created cohorts, you know, like peer groups that they could stay in touch with to support each other, which I've heard they've done some really amazing things in groups.
It would be interesting to see if those cohorts got together and developed any projects or organizations on their own.
They
Because I think
do.
about oftentimes disenchantment with certain sectors. So like Blacks in academia, I have tons of friends who got PhDs and wanted to be professors, and before they finished their programs were like, I'm out of here, like I'm not doing this, you know. And nonprofits can be similar in that sense of like, you know, the problems with between identity and the sector make it so that you kind of are disenchanted or remove yourself from the sector altogether. So it could be interesting to see too how cohorts and you know, identity-based cohorts work as well with functioning and developing their own initiatives.
Yeah, you know, that I've heard a lot about, and it's very organic. It's always really great to see sort of what they've identified as an opportunity to collaborate, sometimes because of a crisis, you know, where they just want to talk to somebody they trust for a little while, small group, and then they figure out how to tackle something together.
It'd be interesting because it'd be an interesting diversity, equity, and inclusion project, right? Because a lot of times too, if that one of the conversations is how do we get the numbers up, but that's the hard, you know, almost like the hard skill, and the soft skills are the cultural interactions, you know. And so how do different offices function culturally differently? And so with how you said it happens organically because there's an issue. Part of that too is the cultural component of just how they communicate. So
well, and selfishly, I haven't wanted to make this too public, because the thing we know is that sometimes with philanthropy, they get all excited about a solution and then they force it on people, and it's not helpful.
Right.
So, you know, we've been really sort of, the organic structure works so much more respectfully with leaders to define for themselves what matters. And so it's a slippery slope on that, you know, like,
no, that's very true.
What we tend to do is just put people in a room and give them time to talk, and they will figure it out. They don't need a whole lot there. Just ask a question. You see it all the time, right? And then let them go, get out of the way. Don't tell them what to do. They don't need that. You know,
Candace, I was thinking about that. Yeah, I was thinking how that would, the visualization would look with that Link Curious software.
So fun
I think
to
that would
see
look cool.
the movement.
We just did what was that, last week? Then we did the demo of that.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a platform or a tool developed at Stanford, and now it's commercial, but they used it as the underlying tech for the Pandora Papers and another big project where they were looking at, you know, diverse data sets and then trying to find these connections. But they ended up with these, as Candace mentioned, these kind of spokes and nodes kind of visualization. So when you see it, it's like, oh my God, like, so cool.
Wow.
Yeah. It'd be neat.
Wouldn't that be exciting to be able to do the analysis and see what patterns and trends pop up? Like if there's anything there that And I bet there is.
Yeah, this is so helpful.
No one's popped back over, so I'm assuming they're having intense and inspired conversation. Hopefully.
This will be helpful for me. So as part of my fellowship, I have these research, and part of it are these kind of stakeholder conversations and meetings. And so I had Black-led orgs as a part of that list of things I want to do this quarter. So this will kind of knock that. I could check that off my list.
It's so strategic of you.
It worked. When Trisha suggested it, I was like, yes.
Hello, I'm back. I got kicked out. My internet crashed. How is your class going, Paulette?
Oh my God, it is the best thing I've ever been a part of.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It's just, I didn't know what to expect, and I thought it would be more focused on just our, professional, our work, projects that we're doing. But it's really, comprehensive. It's more about you as a person. So there's a lot about self-care and,
great.
And, just kind of helping you build as a leader in your organization. Just, and then you have just a wonderful cohort. One of my colleagues I meet with now every Friday. He runs Open Vallejo, and he's doing some really interesting work there.
Very cool. Oh, we're back.
Starting to come back. Welcome back. I know there were some groups that were not able to make their notes in the Google document. So you'll just share out what you talked about, and myself and Joy will be in the Google document taking down those notes, because we want to make sure that we get all the roots of the conversations today. But I hope that was a good time to connect together. I heard some rich discussions too. All right. Is everyone back, Brian?
Yes, I thought it was me.
Excellent. Okay. So I know probably you could have had twice as much time and still not run out of things to say with each other, but let's just ask for group one if you want to share 3 highlights from your discussion that you want to share out to the full group. Room 1, that was the group that I was in as note taker. I think all right, let's start with room 2. Oh, sorry, Andrew, are you ready for room 1?
I think we just noted that this does open up the potential for collaboration on a whole different level between the nonprofits that are listed, and then hopefully in the future for-profit and other organizations that are listed. Beyond what we took notes on, we think this is an opportunity to maybe have regular sessions like this, maybe based on region, so that we can see kind of who the people on the list are face to face, and then kind of create exponential opportunities for collaboration. So we want to see this turn into conversations and not just the maps list. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Do we have somebody from room 2 want to share a couple of highlights?
I can share on behalf of room 2. So we had a good conversation. We sort of went in depth, more in breadth, and we talked at length about CBOs that are fiscally sponsored to be made on this platform, particularly understanding some of the funding challenges that Black-led orgs historically have had, as well as just thinking about future and thinking about sort of shifts in Black migration, right, as we're mapping census data. Be curious to sort of see shifts in migration on the map, as well as shifts in Black-led organizations, right? Are we seeing an increase in Black-led organizations following some of this work? Are we seeing a decrease? And I think it would lead to subsequent sort of funding opportunities.
Thank you so much for that. Group 3. Anyone who was in room 3? Dynasty.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, you unmuted yourself. Are you ready?
Yeah, I didn't even know if I'd unmuted myself, but okay. Hello, everyone. I had met with Alicia, Bree, and Jonathan. We had a great conversation about the power of data and how it drives results, and putting data at the forefront of the work allows people to see that discovery in the community, be able to learn and unlearn again. I think that's the important thing. I also talked about how data has helped me in the grant writing process. And allowing me to see the needs of my community. So as a social worker, there's always this big question: what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What need are you trying to address? And the only way that we can really channel that energy towards that question and drive the results that we need is that we have to figure out the data. We have to figure out where we are to figure out where we're trying to go. So I really appreciate what this organization is doing. I think the way that we can continue is also in the power of collaboration and unity. If a lot of organizations were brought to the forefront, were discovered, and work together, we can share the plethora of resources and really drive the results that we need. So with that being said, that's all I have.
Thank you, Dynasty. Appreciate you jumping in there on the spot. Room 4, we have a lot of notes. Somebody want to just share what was really bringing the heat in the conversation?
In group 4, we discussed, as you can see on the sheet, a lot, but some of the highlights is understanding the impact and community shared assets. Exactly how do we go about adding information to the database, nonprofits? How are you all updating the information and the categories specifically? Also, potential partners in the area wanting to add that to the list. Essentially, it will be nice to continue these conversations, more roundtables like this. Also, data is very wonderful. The data can actually show the needs of the community, those gaps. Just great conversation. Also, we had a great convo. Ms. Valentine led the difference between Black owned, Black led. So that was really nice. Maybe having more discussions on that, because clearly there's still a little bit confusion on that term, and that's for group 4.
Thank you, Vanessa. Room 5, what was the top thing that was coming up in the conversation?
A lot of the same conversations that we've heard in previous rooms about, opportunities to expand the database by service category and filter by geography, but also filters by age group as well. But I think one of the things that we were also really excited about, similar to the last comment, is just the opportunity to collaborate across the board, and understanding that it takes collective action to really dismantle some of the systems that we're talking about. It really resonated with me in particular, and we thought funders and other nonprofits, and we saw, the Chamber of Commerce as organizations that would really benefit from this information, and the families and the communities that we serve, making it available to them as well, to identify resources in terms of, exercising their own agency and getting the work that they need done. So, so those are others who could benefit from it, from group 5, holding it down. Group 5.
Thank you, Rob. Group 5, taking care of business over there. Room 6. We have some nice notes. Let's hear by voice. What was the conversation?
I can share.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, so similar to what's come up already, we definitely were considering maybe like having a tier 2 on the mapping with those organizations that maybe don't have the 501c3 status yet, but are doing the work, are making the impact, are having a great influence in their community and Black led. But working towards that status, but they're not there yet. And that can take some time because of resources. And then the other thing we talked about, and just affirming what everyone's already said, that partnership piece and the knowledge to really hone in on the needs that are highlighted by what the map reveals, and being able to tap into organizations that maybe weren't already in touch with one another.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And group 7, I don't recall if we had folks in that room after all. Okay.
No, we didn't.
Thank you, Brian. I thought not. Just wanted to be sure. All right, let's go back to the slideshow. I'm only seeing yeah, there we go. Awesome. Well, this was fantastic. I hear for sure the appetite for more conversations like this. So as we get together with the team that co-created the opportunity today, we'll for sure keep that in mind. I know it's been, when we had our own breakout group as the hosting team, we were really thrilled and getting lots of insights and ideas already. So we'll be looking forward to how we move the conversation forward. Before we go, Candace has already gotten us going. We want to ask you to share in the chat and a couple people out loud one word or hashtag about how you're feeling today. So we got encouraged, insightful. Hey, Coach V. I think that's for somebody else, but that sounds good. That's friendly and connected. Pensive. Lots of food for thought here. Who else? Motivated. I love it.
Alexis, I think Dynasty had a question.
Oh, go ahead, Dynasty. Thank you, Brian.
I forgot to add something with the last question. I was thinking about maybe when thinking about the mapping out Black organizations, there are a lot of Black-led organizations in LA, but a lot of our organizations may still be Black-led, but have a diversity on the board. We notice when we are writing grants, there's this big thing around your board has to represent your population. And because our population in LA is so diverse, I've noticed there's, I don't know if there's a stigma around it or something around it, but when you have a board, I noticed that if you're too Black owned, sometimes you don't get in those doors or sit at those tables. So I think, you know, just certain, I would say places around the world, we all don't have that, you know, that place to be able to do those things as well in the way that we would like to. So I just thought I wanted to share that when you guys are mapping things out.
Thank you, Dynasty. That's helpful for us too. We do trainings about board diversity, and we do talk about what is the diversity that you're looking for, and that represents your community that you're engaged with. Sometimes it is racial and ethnic diversity, and sometimes there's other dimensions of diversity within your community or a particular ethnic group that is also important to consider. So this is part of our learning and unlearning, I think, that you referenced, that we're doing together in public to figure out how do we do this work in a way that's equitable for our communities and adjust our systems so that we can really do right, Excellent, excellent. So we got some more hashtags. We got power and collaboration. We have, I feel hopeful, encouraged, unified, inspired, invigorated, inspiring, and just curious. Excellent. We will ask, Brian's going to play a little music for us, excuse me. And we're going to put a link in the chat if you have access to that to grab an evaluation to complete. It's very brief. Also gives you a chance to put any last thoughts or questions that you might have. We will send that out on email because I know some folks aren't getting the links through the chat today. So you'll be able to do that later today when you get that in the email. And I just wanted to give a moment for Paulette's team, the BLO database team, Trisha, maybe for any closing remarks. I know Trisha's has it in the chat, but let's hear some voices.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. This was so helpful to us and really helping us think through some more of the nuances of the work we're doing. So I really just appreciate everyone's time and then thoughtfulness.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everyone too for coming. I know that when we went through this with Paulette's team, I was just personally so excited and inspired, and I really hoped that others would see the value that I see in this, and I'm excited to hear that it sounds like you guys do, and that there's lots of opportunity to improve and to work together to break down barriers and improve our community. So I'm excited, and thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you so much. Regina, just a couple sentence to close us out here.
I was just thinking that it wouldn't be possible if we didn't have sponsors and partners. So thank you, Tricia, for making this happen, and so glad we got to learn from everybody today. So wishing everybody a good afternoon, and thanks again.
Yes, thank you to our producer team and our support, Brian and Joy. And be on the lookout. Brian, we have one more slide. Be on the lookout. We have a couple of things we want to let you know about. One is that you'll be getting the evaluation link and the links that were shared in the chat today as an email from us. Also, we have on Friday a lunch and learn addressing the Great Resignation. That's a free event. If you go to our website, you can register for that. Should be a great event. It's an hour. You can have your lunch, be off screen, get some good information, see some colleagues and folks. We have coaching skills for managers coming up. It's a 2-class series, registration fee based, also very useful. And then another piece that we're excited to preview with you today is that we have the Center for Nonprofit Management does a compensation and benefits survey, and we've done that over about a decade. This year, we are paying more attention and have added questions about equity and about board composition and experiences of people of color in the workplace. We are doing the analysis of that data now. We expect to share it with you in April. And in the meantime, we are planning a couple of listening sessions to find out about the experiences, particularly of people of color in the workplace, to round out the survey data. So you're seeing information from us about that. We have your email from your registration, so please be on the lookout for those things. We love to have these learning sessions and learn from you. So that's it for today. Thank you again, everyone. I hope you have a beautiful day. We appreciate you for the work that you do and your contributions today.